What if I told you that the fate of humanity rests in the hands of a man who once brought an empire to its knees, only to watch it rise again more brutal than ever before? Pierce Brown's Light Bringer doesn't just continue the Red Rising saga. It shatters everything you thought you knew about power, sacrifice, and the true cost of revolution. Today, we're diving deep into the sixth installment of what many consider the greatest space opera of our generation. This isn't your typical book summary. We're going to explore why Lightbringer represents Brown's most ambitious and emotionally devastating work yet, examining how it transforms from a tale of rebellion into something far more complex and terrifying. Pierce Brown's Lightbringer stands as the sixth novel in the Red Rising universe, arriving 10 years after the original trilogy concluded and serving as the third book in the Iron Gold era. Published in 2023, this 700-page epic represents Brown's most mature and sophisticated writing, tackling themes that extend far beyond the original class warfare narrative that made the series famous. The novel picks up the threads left dangling from Dark Age and Iron Gold, but rather than simply continuing those storylines, Brown weaves them into something entirely new. Where previous books focused on Darrow's rise from lowly Red to legendary Reaper, Lightbringer explores what happens when revolution succeeds but fails to deliver the promised utopia. The book grapples with post-revolutionary disillusionment, examining how societies rebuild after their foundational structures have been destroyed. What sets Lightbringer apart from its predecessors is Brown's willingness to challenge his own mythology. Darrow, once the unquestionable hero, becomes a figure of controversy within his own narrative. The Sovereign, previously a clear antagonist, reveals layers of complexity that force readers to question everything they believed about the conflict between colours. Brown doesn't just tell a story, he deconstructs it, rebuilding it into something that reflects the messy reality of political change. The novel also represents a technical achievement in science fiction literature. Brown's world building has evolved from the relatively simple hierarchy of the original trilogy into a complex interplanetary political system. His character development shows remarkable growth, with supporting characters receiving the depth and attention previously reserved for main protagonists. The result is a work that satisfies longtime fans while attracting new readers who appreciate sophisticated political science fiction. Lightbringer opens with the solar system in chaos following the events of Dark Age. Darrow the Reaper has vanished, presumed dead after his apparent sacrifice at the end of the previous book. Without their legendary leader, the Republic faces collapse as multiple factions vie for control. The society of old is gone, but what replaces it proves even more dangerous and unpredictable. Virginia, or Augustus, known as Mustang, struggles to hold the Republic together while searching for her missing husband. Her political acumen faces its greatest test as she navigates between hardline military leaders who want total war and moderate voices calling for negotiation. Meanwhile, her young son Pax grows up in a world where his father's legend casts an enormous shadow, creating expectations no child should bear. The Ash Lord's daughter, the sovereign Lysander O'Loon, emerges as a formidable opponent with her own vision for humanity's future. Unlike the previous sovereign, who ruled through fear, Lysander believes in a return to the old ways, but refined through experience and wisdom. Her forces, bolstered by new allies and technologies, present a threat that cannot be defeated through conventional warfare alone. Ephraim, Cassius, and other familiar faces find themselves scattered across the system, each dealing with the aftermath of revolution in their own way. Some have found peace in obscurity, while others cannot escape the gravitational pull of the conflict that shaped their lives. Their personal journeys intersect with the larger political narrative, showing how individual choices ripple through the fabric of civilization. As the story unfolds, Brown reveals that the true enemy may not be any human faction, but something far more ancient and dangerous. The discovery of archaeological evidence pointing to a previous civilization raises questions about humanity's place in the galaxy and whether their conflicts are part of a larger pattern that is repeated throughout cosmic history. The revelation of Darrow's survival forms the first major plot point, but Brown subverts expectations by showing a changed man rather than the triumphant return fans might anticipate. Darrow has been captured and tortured, not just physically, but psychologically, by forces that understand exactly how to break someone who has never truly been broken. His captivity reveals the depth of his enemies' understanding of his character and their willingness to use that knowledge ruthlessly. The political manoeuvring within the Republic creates the second major storyline, as Virginia discovers that democracy is far more challenging than revolution. She faces opposition from her own allies, who question whether peaceful solutions are possible when dealing with opponents who view negotiation as weakness. Brown explores how idealists cope when their principles collide with practical necessity, showing Virginia making compromises that would have been unthinkable in earlier books. Lysander's campaign to reclaim the core represents a third major thread, but Brown avoids painting her as a simple antagonist seeking revenge. Instead, he shows a leader genuinely convinced that her approach offers the best hope for long-term stability and prosperity. Her methods are often brutal, but her motivations stem from witnessing the chaos that followed the original revolution and believing that strong central authority prevents greater suffering. The introduction of new alien technology forms a fourth plot element that recontextualizes the entire series. Brown reveals that humanity's conflicts take place against a backdrop of cosmic significance, with implications that extend far beyond their solar system. This discovery forces characters to reconsider their priorities and question whether their struggles matter on a universal scale or represent dangerous distractions from larger threats. Ephraim's personal journey through addiction and recovery provides a fifth major storyline that grounds the epic scope in human emotion. His struggle with substance abuse following the trauma of previous books reflects how even supporting characters carry real consequences from their experiences. Brown uses Ephraim's story to explore themes of healing and redemption that apply to the entire civilization attempting to recover from decades of warfare. The emergence of Pax as a character in his own right forms the sixth major plot thread, representing the next generation that must live with the choices made by their parents. His relationship with his father's legend creates internal conflict between admiration and resentment, while his mother's political position places him at the centre of conflicts he never chose to join. The seventh major event involves the discovery of ancient ruins that suggest humanity is not the first species to face the challenges currently tearing their society apart. These archaeological findings introduce cosmic horror elements to the space opera framework, suggesting that the patterns of rise and fall have repeated across multiple civilizations throughout galactic history. The climactic battle sequences that close the book represent the eighth major plot element, but Brown structures them as tragic inevitabilities rather than heroic triumphs. Characters make desperate choices with lasting consequences, and victory comes at costs that make readers question whether the price was worth paying. And the battles serve as both action sequences and metaphors for the destructive nature of conflict itself. Revolution without construction leads to chaos. Brown demonstrates through multiple storylines that tearing down existing systems is only the beginning of real change. The Republic's struggles show how difficult it is to build institutions that can govern effectively while remaining true to revolutionary ideals. This takeaway applies to any situation where people seek to change existing power structures without having clear plans for what comes next. Leadership requires accepting responsibility for unintended consequences. Virginia's political challenges illustrate how leaders must deal with outcomes they never intended but helped create through their actions. Her story shows that ethical leadership means acknowledging mistakes and working to correct them rather than shifting blame to external factors. Personal trauma affects entire societies when it impacts key decision makers. Darrow's psychological state influences major political and military decisions, demonstrating how individual healing connects to collective well-being. This takeaway emphasizes the importance of addressing mental health issues rather than expecting people to compartmentalize their personal struggles. Enemy perspectives often contain uncomfortable truths about our own limitations. Lysander's arguments force Republican characters to confront weaknesses in their own system and ideology. Brown shows that dismissing opponents as simply evil prevents learning from their criticisms and improving our own approaches. Technology alone cannot solve problems rooted in human nature. The advanced technologies in Lightbringer amplify existing conflicts rather than resolving them, showing that progress requires changes in how people relate to each other rather than just improvements in their tools. Generational trauma creates cycles that continue until consciously broken. The relationship between parents who lived through revolution and children born into its aftermath demonstrates how unresolved issues pass from one generation to the next, unless actively addressed through honest communication and healing. Power corrupts even those who initially seek it for noble purposes. Several characters in Lightbringer struggle with maintaining their original values after gaining authority, showing how the mechanisms of power themselves can change people's priorities and moral frameworks. Compromise is essential for sustainable change, but requires wisdom to know when principles should not be negotiated. The book shows characters making both necessary and destructive compromises. illustrating the difficult balance between pragmatism and integrity that real-world change agents must navigate. Identity formed through conflict struggles to adapt to peace. Many characters find themselves lost when the clear purposes that defined them during wartime no longer apply, showing how people must consciously choose to grow beyond the circumstances that initially shaped them. Cosmic perspective can provide both humility and purpose when facing seemingly insurmountable challenges. The discovery of ancient civilizations helps characters understand that their struggles are part of larger patterns, while also emphasizing the unique opportunity each generation has to choose different paths than their predecessors. Lightbringer succeeds brilliantly as both entertainment and literature, delivering the explosive action sequences fans expect while grappling with philosophical questions that linger long after the final page. Brown has evolved from a talented storyteller into a major science fiction author, whose work deserves comparison to the genre's greatest achievements. This novel proves that space opera can tackle serious themes without sacrificing the sense of wonder that makes the genre compelling. The book's greatest strength lies in its refusal to provide easy answers to complex questions. Rather than settling into comfortable patterns established by earlier novels, Brown challenges both his characters and readers to think more deeply about the nature of progress, leadership, and human nature itself. The result is a work that rewards careful reading and discussion while remaining accessible to those seeking adventure and excitement. For long-time fans of the series, Lightbringer represents everything they could have hoped for in terms of character development and plot progression, while surprising them with new depths and directions. New readers will find a complete story that stands alone while benefiting from the rich foundation established by previous books. The novel succeeds in satisfying multiple audiences without compromising its artistic vision or emotional honesty. Ultimately, Lightbringer establishes Pierce Brown as one of the most important voices in contemporary science fiction, combining the entertainment value of classic space opera with the intellectual sophistication of modern literary fiction to create something genuinely new and important.